The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has strongly condemned the terror attack on the bus in Jerusalem. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric conveyed his condolences to the families of the victims on behalf of the organization. At least 6 Israelis were killed and 8 others wounded by Palestinian gunmen in one of the deadliest shooting attacks in Jerusalem in the past few years. Israeli police describe the shooting as a suspected terror attack.
Here today, you saw that we issued a statement in which the Secretary General strongly condemned the terror attack on a bus in Jerusalem, in which at least 6 people were killed and many others injured. He conveys his heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a full and speedy recovery to those who were wounded.
The 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly has begun. This comes at a pivotal moment to renew global commitment to multilateralism, solidarity, and shared action for people and planet. This year's high-level week highlights the urgency of delivering on the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals and reinvigorating global cooperation. 2 key platforms will spotlight action and solutions. That's the flagship SDG Media Zone, produced by the UN Department of Global Communications, which will be held from 22nd to 26th September, and the Goals Lounge, convened by the UN Deputy Secretary General and hosted by the UN Office for Partnerships from 20th to 26th of September. The theme for the summit is Better Together, 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights. Global Affairs analyst Collins Nweke joins me on the news to discuss the UNGA 80th session and anniversary. Good to have you join us.
Thank you, Precious, for having me.
So when the UN was formed in 1945, its charter set out aspirations to create and preserve peace. There was a talk about international law and human rights, as well as the respect for obligations arising from treaties. But when you look at the condition in Gaza, for example, the Russia-Ukraine war, and then the trade war sparked by Trump tariffs, has the illusion been totally stripped away about the role of the UN on the global stage?
No, it hasn't. The UN, we have to always remind ourselves in times like this, isn't a world government. It's the world's meeting point, not a government. So when great powers use the United Nations, it saves life. When they sidestep it, people die, as we see in, in Gaza and a number of other places, Ukraine being one of them. And so that actually, points.
The UN in managing global challenges is often strained by the competition between these emerging powers. The question really is how the United Nations can rejuvenate itself in a way that accommodates this power shift and then the multiple centers of influence.
Well, the key word there is reform. And that reform has got to start from the Security Council. There are a number of ideas on how that could be done. You referred to the emerging multipolar world led by, China. And only just about a week or 2 ago, we were witnesses to the, Global Governance Initiative that they put together. And so it is no longer a question of when, it is not a question of if it will happen, it is a question of when it will happen. And that is where Africa, for instance, needs to be added. Africa and Latin America, they should have permanent seats, and Nigeria and AU, they already backed the so-called Ezuwini consensus. I mean, that is a positive thing. They need to step that out. Now, the veto restraint during mass atrocities is also something, tied to that they need to, look into as part of that reform. And then they need to reinvent peacekeeping. There has to be a shift from static blue helmets to integrated stabilization with technology, intelligence, rapid response, and of course, predictable forming. So yeah, there are quite a lot to reform, but the United Nations remains an inevitable force in keeping the world peace and keeping the Third World War away.
You mentioned Africa. We know that it is going to be days of a spectacle of speeches by world leaders, and that would also include African leaders. There will be meetings and summits as well on the sidelines. And because you mentioned the United Nations Security Council, what can Africa take away from this assembly, and how do we drive that conversation, especially the UNSC as well?
Yeah, indeed. Africa has been excluded. I mean, that much is obvious. And when we talk of Africa, Precious, we're talking of 1.4 billion citizens of the world, 0 permanent security council seats. If that is not, a legitimacy gap, one just simply wonders what is. Now, Africa might be slow in starting, but like I mentioned, there have been some momentum, building. I mean, if you look at the Agenda 2063, I mean, you will see great signs of efforts being made, and the current president of Nigeria has actually made it part of the centerpiece of his Africa policies, of which Nigeria foreign policy is embedded in Africa as a centerpiece. So a lot of momentum is building, and then with BRICS and Nigeria now being part of, in terms of being a partner country, not a full member, which was a strategic decision, you can see that there is, strategic momentum building towards, getting Africa in the right place within the UN.
And we hope that this, the 80th UNGA would be the opportunity to drive and solidify that conversation. Thank you so much for your time. A lot to watch out for in the next few days. Always a pleasure to have you, and I'm sure we'll have you over again and again to have these conversations. Global Affairs Analyst Nweke.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.